Alright everybody, welcome back to another Friday Night Magic tournament from Lost Legion Games and Comics in beautiful downtown South Charleston, West Virginia. My name, as always, is Zachary Evans. I'm in here by myself tonight. We've got 4 rounds of standard Magic for you. Starting off with a round 1 feature match on the left, it's Nick Reid. He's playing Jund Monsters, as he is wont to do, and his opponent is Brandon Hart, a stream regular, but due to some work commitments, hasn't been able to make FNM for these many months, but he is now back, and he is playing Jund Monsters as well, so a mirror match right off the front. We've got Nick's leading off with a Elvish Mystic into a Sylvan Caryatid, but missing his second land drop. Brandon finding a Scavenging Ooze, and then scrying with a Temple of Abandon. 4 rounds of Magic tonight, I believe 20-ish players. We do have a split, well actually it's not 20-ish players, it is closer to 15 players, as tonight we have a split FNM, as today was the release of Conspiracy, and I believe there are some Conspiracy drafts also going on in the stores, so lower numbers than expected, but it is all the ringers, so we should have some good quality Magic tonight. Nick finds a second land, shocks himself here with a Stomping Ground. Interesting, not sure what that necessarily indicates, unless he's trying to load up a Scavenging Ooze, but that seems somewhat odd. Brandon finding a 4th land in a Xenagos the Reveler. Going to go ahead and make a Satyr token. Doesn't really have any good attacks here. It's an Abrupt Decay. So there is the black in the Jund Monsters list. So Ooze down. Nick's Ooze can now go up to a 3/3 should he want to. Could force Brandon to chump out with that Satyr token. As Nick's going to try to get that Xenagos off the board. 3 mana for a Domri right into the Glare. So Scavenging Ooze, eat a creature, make it a 3/3. Use Domri to fight the Satyr token, then attack unabated into Xenagos to clear the board. So pretty good turn from Nick there, leaving Brandon with no non-land permanents on board. 4 power and an active Domri on his side. Yes! Hey buddy.
Mr. Striggy.
No.
Okay, sorry.
No problem. So somebody's looking for Ian Streggy. So there is a Dreadboard taking out the Domri. This Jund build has access to a lot of highly pertinent cards in the current format. Abrupt Decay, getting a lot of push because of the recent printing of Temple of Malady. I know a lot of junk and black-green decks rising up, and with the advent of, or with the increase in the number of Abrupt Decays that we're seeing in the format, cards like Underworld Connections, Detention Sphere, and Domri not nearly as good as they once were, as we see Nick follow up his Domri with a Xenagos of his own. He's going to tick it up to make some mana, play a Corso Cruffix, revealing a Storm Breath off the top of his deck. So Nick getting busy pretty quickly here, as despite a good start from Brandon, nothing to follow up here. So we've got a Planeswalker and 2 creatures we need to answer in the near term here. An untapped land and a overloaded Mizium Mortars would be particularly good, but we're just going to hardcast a Gore Clan Rampager that will shut off attacks for now. So there is the Storm Breath off the top, revealing a Gore Clan to be drawn next turn. We can tick Xenagos up to generate the mana we need to cast a Storm Breath, which looks like we're going to do there. Oh, that's even better. So we generate 4 mana. We use 3 of it to cast a Domri. We know what's on top. It's a Gore Clan, so we take Domri up and draw it. Now we should be floating a mana here. Use that and the tapped Overgrown Tomb to cast another Sylvan Caryatid. And we're going to get aggressive here. Brandon can't really block here because we know about the Gore Clan Rampager. So let's see if he remembers the Gore Clan, which Nick can definitely cast off of his Caryatid, Stomping Ground, and Elvish Mystic. So representing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 as it currently sits. No creatures in any graveyards, so we're not going to be able to pump it, though we can Gore Clan and then eat the Gore Clan before damage. So we are going to Gore Clan we're going to Blood Rush the Scavenging Ooze, and then as expected eat the Gore Clan. Nope, decided to pass on that, but 7 from the Ooze, 8, 9 total, dropping Brandon all the way down to 8. And we know Nick has a Stormbreath Dragon in his hand. He's almost got enough mana to both play and Monstrous. So what does Brandon need here? Brandon definitely needs... There's the untapped land, and there is the Mizium Mortars, but that's going to put him down to 6, and that's going to put him nearly dead to the Stormbreath Dragon. Though it's not going to be easy for Nick to cast the Stormbreath, as he only has 2 lands. He's going to be losing his whole Mana Dork team. So everything goes there. So we can take out the Domri, or we can kill the Xenagos. I think we got to take the Domri out here. So nothing like a good 5 for 1 with an overloaded Mizium Mortars. Nick reloads with a Scavenging Ooze. He can make a Satyr here, and then next turn, assuming both his creatures live, he can generate the mana, or he at least is representing the ability to generate the mana to cast his Stormbreath, which is now lethal by itself as the Satyr gets in for 2, dropping Brandon down to 4. There's an Ooze that's going to put Brandon's life total up to a point where that dragon isn't going to be good enough on one swing. Still under some pressure here. Now we do have the awkward Scavenging Ooze standoff, as both players with an active oozes. It's going to be difficult for either of them to activate it and net, and for it to resolve, as the opponent can just target the same creature in response and back and forth as long as they are content to do so or have the mana to do so. So, Gore Clan attacks in. Looks like it just goes after Nick's life total. And while Nick is tapped out, Brandon very smartly going to go ahead and eat 4 creatures, making a 6/6 Ooze going up to 8. This game is both players swinging haymakers here, so Nick's going to untap. Let's see what he can come up with here. Really needs a land here, a land that comes into play untapped. That would let him cast his Dragon. Dragon not nearly as lethal in this matchup, since both decks have access to Mortars and Dreadbore, potentially Doomblade or Ultimate Price, depending on the build here. So it doesn't look like we've drawn a land as Nick filters through his graveyard. There is an Elvish Mystic. Tick up Xenagos. Eat 3 creatures. Make a 5/5 Ooze. Go up to 16. Nope. Go up to 15 apparently. And then, well, pump fake there from Brandon. This game really highlighting the power of Scavenging Ooze. Good in the early game, as it is a bear. It does put on considerable pressure up front, but not a bad top deck, even in this situation where both players have oozes. Both players getting activations in, 6 extra power being generated off of graveyard activations from the ooze. The little bear that could, doing a lot of work here for both players. And Brandon's got a choice here. He's got a 6/6 Ooze and a 4/4 Trampler, trying to figure out what the best way is to close this game out. His life total is under pressure. I think the graveyards are empty, so that Ooze on Nick's side of the board is not going to get any bigger. So he's looking at, assuming we make a Satyr token, 2, 4, 6, 8, 9 on the way back. So I'm not sure if Brandon has any real good attacks here. He could attack with, well, no, he's going in with the team here. Are we dead to a double Gore Clan? Is that something that can happen? 6, 10. Yeah, but double Gore Clan would be lethal. Also be very unlikely. So Brandon serves in with the team. Now the pressure's on Nick. How are we lining up blocks? It seems to me like it's a matter of whether or not Nick wants to for sure cast his dragon next turn or protect his life total. So there is a chump block by the Satyr on the Ooze. If we have a Gore Clan now, we can at least get through 8 damage as we give it trample. That would drop Nick to 3, and that's what we're going to do here. Uh-oh. I always forget what that card does. Is it Flesh and Blood? Alright guys, game 2 underway here. Brandon on the mull to 6, but he is on the draw, so he'll be able to hopefully draw back out of this, leading off with a turn 1 Elvish Mystic, and Nick with a turn 2 Doomblade going to try and slow Brandon's development down. Is hitting a turn 3 Courser in these matchups, or a turn 2 Courser or a turn 2 Domri is often back-breaking. Even Jund on Jund matchup where you can deal with a Domri a lot earlier, but the card advantage just gets out of control here. So there is a turn 3 Courser from Nick, revealing a Gore Clan Rampager off the top. Not nearly as scary. Brandon going to go ahead and scry. Let's see if he follows up with the Domri for the perfect synergy. Nope, it's just a Scavenging Ooze, which is effectively a 3-3 here, as Brandon can eat his Elvish Mystic. So Nick draws his card. That's a Temple of Malice on top. He's going to go ahead and play that. He's going to go ahead and scry, revealing a Mutavault. These Jund decks can afford to play a Mutavault? That is crazy to me. But I don't doubt them. So Mutavault on top, Nick deciding if he wants to scry it to the bottom. He does. And he reveals an Elvish Mystic. So let's see if Nick has any follow-up here. Can't really attack, as that Scavenging Ooze is effectively a 3-3. He's going to go ahead and attack. Doesn't really have any motivation not to. He can represent Gore Clan here. So Brandon really obliged to let it through, and he does take 2 damage, falling down to 16. Let's see if Nick has a 3-drop follow-up. He definitely has a debate here, so unlikely that he's not going to play something. And as soon as I say that, he does in fact play nothing. So end of turn, Brandon goes up to 17, eating his Mystic as expected. So tapping 4 mana for a Pelucranos, Putrefy going to take out the Scavenging Ooze. Now Nick, I did look away from the screen, but I imagine that Putrefy took out the Ooze before Pelucranos showed up. Nick now probably wondering if he should have held that back, but at some point you have to just, you just have to kill what's beating you now. You can't play around everything. So we're attacking again, Brandon deciding once again if he wants to potentially trade his Pelucranos with a Bloodrushed Gore Clan. He decides he does not. So he drops down to 15. Let's see if Nick has a follow-up. So we almost played a Blood Crypt there. So a Dreadbore going to take out the Pelucranos. There's the Elvish Mystic that we knew about. Blood Crypt comes into play. Tap, still gain a life off the Courser trigger. Rakdos Return sitting on the top of Nick's deck. And it's currently for 3. It's going to be good enough to empty Brandon's hand. So much like or unlike I should say, in Game 1, where both players were throwing haymakers, This game looks a little bit more lopsided as soon as I say that. Storm Breath shows up. Goes ahead and gets in, dropping Nick to 16, but drawing Rakdos return, showing a Pelucranos on top, trying to read Nick's hand, shuffling it vigorously. There should be a Gore Clan in that, as he's represented that since turn 4 of the game, as well as Rakdos return that we saw him just draw. I would think here you would definitely want to clear out Brandon's hand. As you know, they're all spells because he didn't play a land, so... I believe that's what we're going to do. Rakdos is return for 2, 3... Yep, Rakdos is return for 3. Only going to discard 2 cards, but still going to get in 3 extra damage. And then serve in for 3 more, so put Brandon down to 9. And then Nick just passes back, so Brandon hellbent before his draw for the turn. He finds a Domri, literally the best card he could find. And I believe at this point we probably... What do we do here? Fight the Courser, get in for 4? So we can either fight the Courser and get it off the board, or we can try and draw a card. I'm not sure which is necessarily better here. Brandon decides he's going to try and draw. Let's see if he gets rewarded. It is an Elvish Mystic. Not that exciting. I guess we're obliged to attack in here. We're definitely not going to win the game by waiting around. So Dragon comes in for another 4. And we pass back here. So we know Nick is drawing this Pelucranos. Courser revealing Stomping Ground on top. An original Stomping Ground. So +1 to Nick for original art cards. He's got 6 mana, 7 if he plays that Stomping Ground from the top of his deck, or has another one in his hand, but I don't believe he does. Needs to find an answer to that dragon. So just going after Brandon's life total. Chump blocks with the Elvish Mystic, but Nick plays the Gore Clan Rampager that he's been representing since turn 1. There's Pelucranos. Now if Brandon finds an untapped land, he can monstrous that that dragon. The sudden shocks, or the sudden impact on him, going to go for 1. But it will allow him to then monstrous his Domri. Oh, I apologize. He can't. I apologize. He can't. Can't monstrous his dragon because he lost the Elvish Mystic. So bestow Boon Satyr on a dragon. Fight the Pelucranos. Attack in for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. But Nick shows him another copy of Rakdos' Return, and that's going to be good enough for a lethal fireball. So we're all tied up here going into Decider of our round 1 feature match as Nick rides the back of removal and Rakdos' Return. Alright, so game 3 underway. Brandon Hart dropping the second game. He's on the play here in the Decider. Turn 1 Overgrown Tomb into an elf. He misses a second land drop, but he does have a Sylvan Caryatid. So let's see if Nick can punish him at all. He needs to find some off-colored mana here if he wants to, either Doomblade, Dreadbore, or Abrupt Decay. Can't actually Dreadbore here, and I'm not entirely sure that Nick has a Dreadbore in his deck. We have seen it out of Brandon, but we have not seen that card in Nick's deck. No, that's not true. He did Dreadbore something, I think, in game 2. So there is a turn 2 Courser of Kruphix off of a Munivault. That's important to note because Nick does not have access to non-green mana here. Putrefy on the top of his deck. Let's see if Brandon can dig out of this. Mizium Mortar's taking out the Courser, so that's going to strand Nick. Likely, if he's playing that Mutavault for turn 2, he likely does not have a another mana source, but Nick drops to 19 off Elvish Mystic Beatdown. Both players keeping some sketchy ones here. The classic trap of Mana Dork, Mana Light Hand. Well, there's a Temple of Malady coming down. So that not only... Oh, it's a foil one too. Very nice. Of course, we'll tap for double mana. Scrying to the top here. 2 mana for Caryatid. No, a Scavenging Ooze. Even better. So that Ooze is going to be a 3/3 immediately because of the Courser in the graveyard. There, Brandon Windmill slams the mountain off the top of his deck. And there is a Pelucranos. And end of turn, Nick is going to, as expected, go back up to 20 by eating his Courser. But now needs to find a way to get rid of that Pelucranos. I say that, of course, forgetting that he did reveal a Putrefy off the top of his deck. So likely, no matter what happens here, we are going to Putrefy that Pelucranos. As expected, and then commence the beatdown. Mystic taps for mana, eat the Pelucranos, knock Brandon down to 14. And Nick goes up to 21. So Brandon struggling to get out of this. The Ooze still within Mortar's range. Of course, it can be Abrupt Decayed and Dreadboard. But it is quickly getting out of range of damage-based spells. Well, we're shocking ourselves here. Does that mean a dragon showing up? There is a dragon, comes in tapped and attacking. So Brandon's just going to try and race here. Not sure that's really going to get him where he wants to be, but he's decided there's nothing else he can do. And like a boss, Nick rips a Dreadbore off the top, it looks like. He can cast that, and that should lock up this game. Going to go ahead and shock ourselves down to 15. Here's a Dreadbore. Dragon down. Eat it. Activate our Mutavault. Get in for 5/6 here. Having Brandon's life total, leaving him effectively dead on board, though he can start blocking with his... I must have missed some damage there, so we're down to 4. Brandon's going to take a draw here. Leaves a card on top with Temple of Abandon, or at least throws his hand up, as it apparently doesn't matter what the card is. Now he changes his mind. He's going to go ahead and shove it here. What do we need to get out of this? We need a Dreadbore. We need a Dreadbore on that Scavenging Ooze. That will at least reestablish parity currently, as the Caryatid can block the Mutavault all day. And Elvish Mystics could potentially trade. But Brandon needs a targeted removal spell here. That is not Mortars. There is an Ooze. It is effectively a dead card. So we're likely on chump block duty here with our Elvish Mystic. So question in the chat about the what card that is that's getting a counter. That is the Firebrox promo Scavenging Ooze. Or the, I believe it's the Duels of the Planeswalker promo Scavenging Ooze. So Nick shocks himself down to 14 with an Overgrown Tomb. That's never a good time. loads up the Mutavault and attacks in with the entire team here. No real favorable blocks here from Brandon. I guess we're before blockers here. If I'm Brandon, I jump with the Mystic, eat a Mystic with an Ooze, and then block the Mutavault with the Sylvan Caryatid. Of course, all of this gets wrecked by Gore Clan Rampager, but I think if Nick had Gore Clan, he would just show Brandon. Although he may not, because it depends on how he lines up his blockers, so very possible here that it does not matter and Brandon is dead no matter what, but that's why you play the games, kids. So no shenanigans here. Mystics trade, jump out on the Ooze, and block the Mutavault effectively. But remember, Nick played that Overgrown Tomb untapped. I'm trying to think what he might be representing here. There is a Mistcutter Hydra. It's going to be for 3. Play a Stomping Ground tapped. So I don't really think anything changes here. That Mistcutter is particularly vulnerable in this matchup to every removal spell. We're going to eat the 3 creatures remaining in the graveyards. Nick's going to go up to 17, but more importantly, that Scavenging Ooze is now up to an 8/8. But Brandon's still at 4 here, most of that irrelevant, save for the fact that Gore Clan Blood Rush will give it trample. So it would be a 12 power creature if we go that route. So we move to combat, we load up our Mutavaults. And here we go with blocks. Caryatid down. Mutavault down. Seems unnecessary to attack with the Mutavault in that spot. There's a dragon off the top. Here's all these removal spells. Nick politely shows him a Putrefy and a Mizzium Mortar so he can clear Brandon's board out. And with Nick at 17, not anywhere close to being within lethal damage range. And so Nick drops the first game, but picks up the second 2, and he wins our round 1 feature match. Both these guys have some pretty solid decks there, it looks like, so should be well positioned for the rest of the tournament. Got about 7 minutes left in the round. I don't think we're going to have enough time for another match, so we will be taking a break here shortly.